It has been 5 weeks. 5 long weeks since my fiancée, Lisa, walked out the door and left me with nothing but a hollow space where my heart used to be. We had spent nearly 4 years together, a stretch of time that had once felt like forever, like something unshakable. I had believed we were solid, that the future I pictured was the same one she saw. But 5 weeks ago, all of that crumbled, and I have been living in the wreckage ever since. The only thing keeping me from losing my mind completely was something I read online, the no contact rule. Supposedly, it was the best way to heal, to move on. I forced myself to follow it. I deleted her number, blocked her on every social media platform. It felt brutal at first, but I knew that reaching out, begging her to reconsider, would only push her further away. The silence was suffocating, though. The emptiness of not hearing her voice, not seeing her name pop up on my phone, it was like wandering through the ghost town of a life I no longer recognized. 2 weeks ago, that silence broke. It was not a heartfelt message or anything that gave me the smallest sliver of hope. She just wanted her things. Specifically, whatever was left in my garage. Of all the things we had never said to each other, of all the unfinished conversations, this was the one she chose to have. It was like a punch to the gut. But somehow, I managed to keep my response measured, distant, almost indifferent. I told her I was out of town for work, which thankfully was true. For the past 2 weeks, I had been traveling, and part of me was relieved. If I had been home, I knew I would not have handled it well. Her reply was short. "Let me know when you're back." That was it. No. "How have you been?" No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just business. She wanted her things, and I was just the middleman in making that happen. The way she made it feel so transactional, so detached, stung in ways I did not want to admit. Before I left for my trip, I had gone into the garage to take inventory of what was left of her belongings. There was not much. An old gym bag she had not used in years. A pair of worn-out gardening gloves from that one spring we had decided to plant a garden, one we never finished. I stood there, staring at what remained of what was once our shared life, and I could not shake the feeling that this was not really about the things. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe she genuinely wanted her gloves and her bag back. But deep down, I doubted it. I had spent too many sleepless nights trying to make sense of why she left, and none of it added up. Could she really have walked away so easily? Or was this her way of seeing if I was still shattered, still drowning in the mess she left behind? I pictured her walking into the garage, taking it all in, and feeling some kind of satisfaction that I was still stuck in the past. That thought made me sick. I know I should not care what she thinks anymore. I should be focused on healing, on moving forward. But the truth is, I still care too much. Even now. That is the worst part of all of this. I am still hopelessly in love with her. I kept replaying the moment in my head. Should I be there when she comes? Should I just leave her things out and disappear, making it easier for both of us? Or should I face her, look her in the eye, and see if there is anything left of the person I once knew? The flight home was long, too long. As much as I dreaded the idea of seeing her, I also hated the uncertainty of avoiding it. The whole way back, my mind was trapped in that one thought. Her message kept repeating in my head, the words twisting the knife that was still lodged deep in my chest. "Let me know when you're back." Like I was nothing more than an errand to check off her list. When I finally walked through the front door of my house, the first place I went was the garage. It felt different now, smaller, suffocating, knowing she would be coming soon. Everything inside carried some trace of her, some distant memory of a life that was no longer mine. The old gloves were still there, the same ones she had used the one time we actually worked on the garden. The dirt patch never became what we planned, but I could still picture her there, bent over the soil, her hair catching the sunlight, so focused, so determined. Back then, I had believed we had all the time in the world to finish it. But time, it turns out, is not always what you think it is. I set the gloves down, my heart heavier than before. It is strange, the things that haunt you after a breakup. It is not the big milestones, the vacations, the anniversaries, the grand gestures that gut you the most. It is the small, seemingly insignificant things, the forgotten gloves, the initials on an old gym bag, the reminders that sneak up on you when you least expect them. But why does she want them now? Does she really need these things? Or is this just an excuse? A way to test the waters, to see if I am still lost without her? Or maybe, just maybe, she is looking for her own closure. The not knowing is what kills me the most. Should I be there when she comes? The question gnawed at me, over and over. A part of me wanted to see her, even if it meant reopening wounds that were still raw. Another part of me feared what that would do to me. What if she was cold and distant, acting like nothing had happened? Could I handle that? Could I stand there, look her in the eye, and pretend I was not still aching for her? I wanted her back. There, I admitted it. I wanted her to walk through that garage, see me standing there, and realize she had made a mistake. But deep down, I knew that was just a fantasy. And fantasies do not change reality. If she wanted me back, she never would have left in the first place. Deep down, I knew that. But knowing it did not stop my mind from spiraling. The days dragged on after I told Lisa I was back in town. She said she would come by at the end of the week to pick up her things. That meant I had a few more days to sit in my own thoughts, to overanalyze every possibility. It was both a blessing and a curse. The anticipation was worse than the event itself because, in anticipation, your mind fills in the blanks with the worst possible scenarios. I imagined every version of what might happen. Maybe she would walk in, grab her things without a word, and leave like I was nothing more than a storage unit. Or maybe she would see me, glance in my direction, and look straight through me like a stranger. That thought was painful, but somehow, the one that hurt most was the idea that she might act cheerful, like we were just old friends catching up, like nothing had ever happened, as if she had moved on without a second thought. But despite all those possibilities, there was still a small, irrational part of me that hoped. I hated that part. That foolish, desperate part of me that clung to the idea that she might walk in, see me, and realize she had made a mistake. That she would remember what we had and come back. I knew better. I knew hope was a dangerous thing, but once it found a crack to slip through, it was nearly impossible to push it out again. I buried myself in work, doing everything I could to keep my mind off of it, but it was always there, lurking in the background. The garage, the text message, the countdown to Friday. One night, I found myself in the garage again, moving things around, making sure everything of hers was in one place, easy to grab. I told myself I was doing it to make things easier, to keep her from lingering. If everything was right there, she would have no reason to stay, no reason to talk, no reason to look at me. But was that really what I wanted? The night before she was supposed to come, I barely slept. My mind would not shut off. I kept picturing the moment I would see her again, wondering if I would be able to hold myself together or if I would fall apart the second she walked through that door. I knew I could not beg her to come back. That would only push her further away. But the thought of standing in front of her, pretending I was fine, pretending I did not still love her with everything in me, it felt impossible. The morning of her visit, I was up early, too anxious to stay in bed. I sat at the kitchen table, gripping a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold, staring at the garage door like it might somehow give me the answers I needed. I had to make a choice. Should I be there when she arrived, face her head on? Or should I make it easier for both of us and disappear for the afternoon? I paced the house, running through every possibility in my head, but I still had no answer. The clock kept moving, each hour slipping by faster than the last, and my indecision only made the anxiety worse. Finally, I grabbed my keys. I needed air, space, anything to escape the weight pressing down on my chest. I drove with no destination in mind, just moving, hoping that maybe if I kept going, I could outrun my thoughts. But no matter how far I went, I could not escape the image of Lisa walking into the garage without me there, collecting the last pieces of our life together, and leaving like I had never mattered. Eventually, I pulled into a parking lot at a nearby park. I sat there, watching the world go on without me. Kids ran through the grass, their laughter carrying in the wind. Couples walked hand in hand, lost in their own little worlds. I used to be part of that life, carefree, full of plans. Now, I felt like I was standing outside of it, watching from a distance, unable to step back in. I stayed there for hours, letting the afternoon sun move across the sky, trying to calm the storm in my head. But no matter what I did, the unease would not let go. The realization that I was out of time hit me like a punch to the gut. I had spent the whole day running from a decision I still had not made, but whether I was ready or not, Lisa could show up at any moment. I drove home slowly, my hands tied around the steering wheel. When I pulled into the driveway, I hesitated before getting out of the car, staring at the garage door. Her things were still inside, waiting for her. So was I. But could I really face her? Could I handle the way she might look at me, like I was just some old chapter she had closed? I stepped inside, my chest tight, my hands shaking. I walked into the garage, my eyes landing on the old gym bag, the gloves, the last scraps of what had once been ours. Seeing them made my stomach turn. The thought of seeing her made my stomach turn. I knew what I had to do. I opened the garage door, turned my back, and walked away. I went upstairs, shutting the bedroom door behind me, as if that could somehow muffle the noise in my head. I laid down, staring at the ceiling, waiting. My heart pounded against my ribs, but there was nothing left to do. I had made my choice. I did not want to hear her car pull up. I did not want to hear her footsteps in the garage. I did not want to hear the sound of her picking up her things, carrying them away. I tried to prepare myself for the inevitable, tried to imagine how it would feel knowing that she was only feet away, collecting the last pieces of her life from mine. Would she hesitate? Would she look around, taking in the place we had shared? Or would she be exactly as I had feared, quick, distant, detached, like none of it had ever meant anything? I would not know. I could not know. I was not strong enough to watch it happen. So I stayed hidden in my own house, in my own bedroom, avoiding the person who had once been my whole world. The minutes passed like hours. I strained my ears, listening for anything, footsteps, the sound of a car engine, but the house was silent. Painfully, excruciatingly silent. I started to wonder if maybe she had changed her mind. Maybe she was not coming after all. As the sun began to set, I finally got up, feeling hollow. I moved slowly down the stairs, step by step, bracing myself for whatever I was about to see. When I reached the garage, I saw the door still open, exactly as I had left it, and nothing else. Her things were still there, untouched, exactly as they had been all along. She had not come. I stood in the garage, staring at the gloves and the bag, feeling something between relief and disappointment. I had been so sure she would show up, that I would have to face her in some way, even if it was just knowing she had been here while I was gone. But instead, I was left standing in the same place I had been for weeks, alone, waiting for something that was never going to happen. The next few days felt strange, as if I had lost my balance. I had built up this expectation that she would come, and when she did not, it threw me off. Was she playing some kind of mind game? Had she forgotten? Or had she just decided that none of it was worth the trouble after all? I found myself going into the garage more often, standing in front of the small pile of things she'd left behind. Every time I walked in there, it was like stepping into a memory. The air felt heavy, like it carried the past with it. I could almost see her moving around the space, tying up her hair, rummaging through her bag, laughing at some joke I had made. It felt like a haunting, but not the kind you see in horror movies. No, this was worse. This was the kind of haunting that comes from within, when your own memories turn into ghosts that linger in the places you once shared with someone else. I wondered how long it would take for those ghosts to leave, or if they ever would. Every time I saw those gloves, I felt the weight of everything we never got to do together, the plans we made but never followed through on, the life we had imagined but never lived. I started taking long walks after work, just to get away from the house, from the garage, from the constant reminders. I wandered through the same streets we used to walk together, as if retracing those steps could somehow bring me closer to understanding why she had left. I knew it was not healthy, but I could not stop myself. It felt like I was searching for something, but I did not even know what. Closure, maybe, or just a moment where it all made sense. But all I found was more emptiness. The world outside kept moving, but I felt stuck in place. The same thoughts, the same memories, the same questions looping over and over. Why did she leave? Was it my fault? Could I have done something differently? The silence never gave me any answers. It just stretched on, endless and hollow. A week passed. Then another. Life carried on, but I still had not heard from her. I figured that meant she had truly let go, that she had either forgotten about her things or decided they were not worth the effort. Either way, I was done waiting. On a Saturday afternoon, I finally decided it was time to clear out the garage. I needed to reclaim the space, to stop letting her absence dictate my every move. I grabbed a box and started packing up what she had left behind. The gloves went in first, then the gym bag. As I worked, I found a few other things. A book, an old water bottle, small remnants of another life. Holding them felt strange, like handling artifacts from a time that no longer existed. As I was packing the last of it, I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. My heart stopped. For a split second, I thought it might be her. I froze, staring at the open garage door, unsure of what to do. But it was not her. It was a neighbor, pulling in to ask if I needed help with something. I let out a slow breath, forcing a smile, making small talk as best as I could. But even as I stood there, nodding along to whatever he was saying, my mind was somewhere else. I kept thinking about how easily someone else could pull into that driveway, step into the space she left behind. How life keeps moving forward, whether you are ready for it or not. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the box of her things next to me. I had packed it all up, but I had no idea what to do with it. Throwing it away felt wrong, like I was erasing her completely. But keeping it did not feel right either. I stared at the box for what felt like hours, trying to make a decision. Finally, I picked up my phone and sent her a message. It was short, simple. I told her I had packed up her things. And then I waited. I told her she could come pick up her things whenever she was ready. This time, she replied almost instantly. She said she would come by the next day. I was not sure how to feel about it. Part of me was relieved that this would finally be over, that I would not have to wonder anymore. But another part of me dreaded seeing her again, even if it was just for a few minutes. Would I be able to keep it together? Would I say something I would regret? Or worse, Would I completely fall apart the moment I saw her face? I did not know, but I was about to find out. The next morning, I was a wreck. She was supposed to come by in the early afternoon, and I spent the entire morning pacing around the house, trying to find anything to keep my hands and mind busy. I scrubbed the kitchen counters even though they were already clean. I straightened up the living room, adjusted picture frames, wiped down surfaces, anything to distract myself from the inevitable. And then, the moment came. I stood in the living room, watching through the window as her car pulled into the driveway. My chest tightened, my heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. She stepped out, looking as composed as ever, not a single trace of hesitation on her face. And just like that, a wave of emotions crashed over me: love, pain, longing, all tangled together, making it nearly impossible to breathe. She did not hesitate. She walked straight to the garage, grabbed the box, and carried it to her car. No words, no glances in my direction. Just business, the way it had been since she left. As if we had not spent almost 4 years building a life together. As if I had never meant anything to her. I stood frozen as she drove away, watching her car disappear down the street. And when she was gone, something unexpected happened. It hurt, yes, but it did not destroy me. For weeks, I had been dreading this moment, convinced that it would break me all over again. But now that it had come and gone, I felt lighter. The weight I had been carrying, the what-ifs, the lingering hope, the painful memories, suddenly did not feel as heavy. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty driveway, letting that strange sense of relief settle in. The garage was empty now. No more reminders of her. No more ghosts hiding in the corners, waiting to pull me back into the past. It was just a garage again. A space I could fill with something new. Maybe it was not closure, not completely, but it was enough. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe again. In the days that followed, life slowly started to feel normal again. The ache in my chest did not disappear overnight, but it became easier to carry. The memories were still there, but they no longer held the same power over me. I could think about her without feeling like the ground was falling out from under me. I started reconnecting with friends, going out more, filling my days with things that made me feel alive again. I still had moments where I missed her, where I wondered what could have been, but those moments became fewer and farther apart. It was not easy, and I knew it would take time before I was truly over her. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Hopeful that I could build something new, something that was mine alone. And maybe, one day, I would find someone who would stay. And if not, well, that would be okay too. Life moves forward. It always does. And so would I.